Hey everyone, welcome back. So, this coming Sunday, March 10th, we have a super new moon. So, I have been sitting with the energy and channeling it. I have a few messages to share with you, and then we'll jump right into the cards and see just what this new moon wants to share with us today. Before I dive into the messages, I did just want to point out really quick I still have my smoky quartz crystal here from last time that wanted to stay, so that's still with us. But then, rather than the Tibetan black quartz that I had last time, my amethyst cluster wanted to be with us. So she is here. She is beautiful. So the energy of amethyst just wanted to come forward for this reading. So they're right up there. Okay. So I have so many notes from my conversation with the new moon energy. I'm not going to share them all with you. I don't think it's necessary. The essence of the message was simply this: your identity is so much more fluid than you think or than you realize. Okay. And as I heard that sentence, I was shown an image of a river. And this river was serving as an analogy or a metaphor, I guess, for identity itself. So a river is made up of two primary components. There is the bed and the banks of the river, right? Like the container for the water, you could say. And then there's the rocks and the tree stumps and even the tree roots and all these other elements that are very rigid and unmoving. But then there's the water itself, which is constantly moving, constantly evolving and flowing and changing. It's these two elements together, the rigid and the fluid, that create what we call river. And our identity as humans works the same way, according to this new moon energy that I channeled. What it was saying is there are aspects of you that are fundamental, essential, and unchanging, or they change so slowly that you will not perceive it. But then there's aspects of you that are totally fluid. There's aspects of your identity that are constantly changing, constantly in flux. I know for myself, as just kind of a silly example, if somebody asks me what's my favorite color, oh my God, I couldn't answer. It's like, what time of the month is it? What season is it? What's the weather like? What's my mood like? It's constantly changing. Like, my favorite color is constantly changing, right? That's just an example. So your identity is much more fluid than you think. And this new moon is just inviting us to look again and to look more closely at who we think we are. And inherent in that invitation, I think there is an implication that we're making a lot of assumptions about ourselves and we're projecting onto ourselves, right? You're not who you were 10 years ago, and you are, right? So I would just love to ask you, what about you has never changed? From your very earliest memories of yourself to this day, what about you hasn't changed at all? Even if this unchanging quality has expressed itself differently over time, I'm sure there are aspects of you, qualities of you that have never changed. I know that's true for me. And also, what about you is in flux? What about you has changed drastically over time? How are you completely different from who you were 10, 20, 30 years ago? Right? It's just so fascinating to me. So this is the gist of the message coming through this super new moon. Now, moving into the cards. I pulled one card already because I couldn't help it. And I just asked, what is the theme of this super new moon? And we got the Chariot, which is so perfect. I literally cannot stand it. When I look at this card, I don't know if you can see that, but the woman in this card is looking right at you. When I flipped this card over for the first time and I just looked right at it, immediately what came to me was the question, who are you, with a tone of defiance. It's like the Chariot card is challenging us to define ourselves right here, right now, today. It doesn't matter that your identity might be a little bit different tomorrow. Who cares? That's fine. That's okay. That's normal. It's natural. But don't let that hold you back from knowing who you are today. What is your favorite flavor of ice cream today? For me, what is my favorite color today? Who cares if it changes tomorrow? I'm not living in tomorrow, I'm living today, right? So there's almost this push from this new moon energy for us to define ourselves. Don't shy away from defining yourself. What that really means is embrace your ego. Embrace your ego, which is something that, in the spiritual new age community, a lot of people, well, no, any spiritual community or even religious community, it's kind of a universal thing in any form of spirituality or religion to disown the ego, to consider, the ego to be bad, evil, wrong, lesser than, not spiritual, fill in the blank, right? I don't know if you saw the last reading that I did. The video is called Life is Speeding Up. And at the very end of that video, I pulled one card and it was the Nine of Pentacles. And the message through the Nine of Pentacles was quite simply, expansion of consciousness is actually a deepening of physical embodiment. We're not, as we expand in consciousness, we're not leaving the physical behind. It's actually a deepening into the physical. An enlightened human being is a human being that is fully embodied in this miracle of life, right? So the Chariot is saying, own your ego. The ego is literally like the vehicle for awakening. So who are you today, right? Define yourself. Own your desires. Own your truth. That is enlightenment. Or I should say that is a step on the path to awakening consciousness, right? And even, I will say, I wasn't going to say this, but I feel like I need to. One of the messages that came through when I channeled the new moon last night was about this idea of oneness. Something else that we hear often in the spiritual community is this idea of oneness, like from the highest perspective possible. All is one. And even on a scientific level, as far as I understand it, which, what do I know? But as far as I understand it, scientifically, it is proven that everything on the smallest level is the same thing. So scientifically and spiritually, this concept of oneness makes sense. And separation is an illusion, right? Well, that may be true, but here's the thing. Oneness is still a sense of self. This is literally what the new moon told me. I have it written right here. I'm looking at my notes. Oneness is a sense of self. Me, Emily, Rose. I am a oneness, right? I identify as a oneness, even though I'm made up of countless, 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 countless individual parts. I perceive myself as a oneness. That oneness is ego. It's differentiated self, right? So we often talk about oneness as if it is a lack of sense of self. Like I am losing myself in the totality, right? This new moon is pushing us to reframe our definition of oneness. Oneness is, in fact, the biggest ego that exists. And when you merge with oneness, people who have enlightenment-esque experiences and they realize that they are part of everything, they are not losing themselves in everything. They are expanding their sense of self so big to the degree that it includes everything. Okay? So there's no escaping ego, this sense of self, even in the concept of oneness. Oneness is just the biggest ego that exists. So then that brought me to the question, well, if oneness is ultimately just the biggest ego that exists, that means that there has to be something beyond it. Because oneness implies definition. Oneness implies having edges and an end point. Just like me, right? Like I end right here. I stop here, and then the air starts, unless you count my aura, but you know what I mean. Oneness is a defined thing. So what's beyond oneness? What I heard when I asked this question, without a sense of self, what is there? What I heard was that which created sense of self. So that's all I'm going to say about that. I know that's incredibly existential. Some of you may love it and some of you may hate it. I don't know. But this is the kind of stuff that comes through me. So I think that which is beyond a sense of self is potentially something that the human brain cannot comprehend. you know, maybe the closest we can come to that is pure potential or the void, or maybe for my fellow never-ending story fans, the nothing, right? But all of that is to say, even oneness has ego. We can't escape it. Ego is divine. Ego is an expression of the divine. So own it, okay? Define yourself more today. All right, do I want to pull from this deck? No. Okay, let's go to this deck. All right, so where should we go from here? Where do I want to go from here? How can we what is our biggest challenge at this time? What is our biggest challenge at this time in solidifying our sense of self? What is our biggest challenge or block in trying to define ourselves? Justice. Interesting. The energy of owl is definitely coming through, and I just keep hearing the word Lemurian. Lemurian. I don't remember if that's a crystal or if that's like star being people, maybe both. But I just keep hearing Lemurian over and over. Okay. Oh, oh, interesting. What I'm hearing is the challenge for us when we try to define ourselves, or when we try to know ourselves more definitively. The challenge the challenge is that we try, knowingly or unknowingly, consciously or unconsciously, we try to control the truth of who we are, and we try to make it make sense. We try to make these scales of truth perfectly balanced and make perfect sense and make logical sense, right? We want the truth of who we are to be perfectly balanced and controlled. But that's not how it works. There are so many things about you that may not make any sense. I mean, you can't put yourself in a box, right? We always project that out onto other people, don't we? We like to say, don't put me in a box, in this kind of rebellious way. Don't put me in a box, without realizing that we do it to ourselves. We put ourselves in boxes. We try to make ourselves fit perfectly into this preconceived notion of who we think we should be. I've experienced that. Oh my God, in so many ways. I've tried to put myself into boxes to make myself make more sense so that other people can have a more digestible experience of me. But that's not their fault. It's my fault. I'm doing that to myself. So if we're gonna really connect to the truth of who we are as individuals, we have to think way outside the box, and we have to be willing to let ourselves not make any sense. Interesting. Okay. I feel like one more card wants to come out. Clarify the Justice card, please. Thank you. Oh, we got two. Four of Pentacles and Three of Wands. Clarifying justice. I'm getting this feeling of we're stuck. So many of us. You may be stuck in this loop of questioning yourself. It's almost like you think you know who you are, and so you start taking steps in that direction, taking actions based on the idea of who you think you are. You start to plant seeds according to who you think you are, but then at some point or another, it's like your perspective opens, and you see things from a bigger perspective, and you're like, wait a minute, I don't know if that's who I am anymore. And it's this loop of like thinking you know who you are, starting to take action on it, and then realizing, no, that's not quite right, over and over and over again. So it's this loop that would keep you stuck. But this is clarifying the Justice card. So trying to put yourself in a box, trying to make yourself make sense, is what is fueling this loop of stuckness, is what I would call it. Interesting. Well, that just makes me think we need to pay more attention to those qualities and aspects of our identity that are more like the riverbed and the rocks and the roots, right? These aspects of self that are unchanging. I think the remedy for this is to look at what about you has never changed from day one of your life to now. Is there anything about you that has never changed? If so, I think there's a really good chance it never will. And maybe that needs to be the foundation of our lives. Those unchanging, essential qualities of self should be the bedrock and the container for our biggest life choices. I hope that makes sense. So what is the advice here? What is the advice from this super new moon? I'm also getting fox, the energy of fox, which I think is very playful. Thank you. Oh, well, yeah, there it is. 10 of Swords. In order to be authentic, you have to be willing to die to yourself over and over and over again. And I don't just say that lightly because it sounds profound. Like I've lived it. I've lived it. I know that that is what is required, and I've done it. The 10 of Swords is an ego death. It's letting go of who you thought you were so that you can become who you are. All of these projections and assumptions, overlaying the past onto the present, getting distracted by other people's self-expressions. There's just all this gunk in the way of us seeing ourselves clearly. All of these old stories, this heaviness and this pain, inauthenticity that's in the way of us really connecting with our own essence. But we have to do that. We have to be able to connect with our essence in order to lay the foundation of a happy life and create that beautiful, perfect container within which we can play and change without feeling uprooted, you know? That's funny. It's like in order to know your most authentic ego, you have to allow all of the inauthentic egos that you have constructed to die. Maybe one more here. Oh, 5 of Swords. More swords. Well, going through an ego death is not easy, and it's going to kick up. Questioning the reality of who you are is going to probably kick up some fear, some resistance. Totally normal, right? The question is coming up, what is the cost? It's important to ask ourselves, what is the price that we're paying for living all of these overlays, right? All of these overlays. What is the price we pay for trying to control who we are rather than just being who we are? I think it's a pretty big price. I think we pay with our happiness, and it's not worth it. It's not worth it to me. But you have to decide for yourself. Wow. Okay, guys, the super new moon is super indeed. I've loved this energy. This is fascinating to me. So I hope that this was helpful, thought-provoking, or resonated in some way. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Leave any questions or comments down below. I would love to hear from you, and I will see you in the next reading. Bye.